Prayer to Masks by Leopold, Sedar, Senghor. Masks, oh masks, black mask, red mask, you black and white masks, rectangular masks through whom the Spirit breathes, I greet you in silence. And you too, my lion-headed ancestor. You guard this place that is closed to any feminine laughter, to any mortal smile. You purify the air of eternity, here where I breathe the air of my fathers. Masks of maskless faces, free from dimples and wrinkles. You have composed this image, this my face, that bends over the altar of white paper. In the name of your image, listen to me. Now, while the Africa of despotism is dying, it is the agony of a pitiable princess, like that of Europe, to whom she is connected through the navel. Now fix your immobile eyes upon your children, who have been called and who sacrifice their lives, like the poor man his last garment, so that hereafter we may cry here, at the rebirth of the world being the leaven that the white flower needs. For who else would teach rhythm to the world that has died of machines and cannons? For who else would ejaculate the cry of joy that arouses the dead and wise in a new dawn? Say, who else could return the memory of life to men with a torn hope? They call us cotton heads and coffee men and oil men. They call us men of death. But we are the men of the dance, whose feet only gain power when they beat the hard soil. So, just some points of explanation and the definitions, and then I shall go through the poem bit by bit. So, number 1, purify, to cleanse, to clean the air, not like a humidifier, that is to add moisture and humidity to the air to aid breathing. This is cleaning the air. With reference to the world that has died of machines and cannons, which is referring to industry and warfare, this is one of the reasons why the air would need to be made clean. Then we've got despotism, which is ruling with absolute power. It's usually cruel and oppressive and with force. Then we have agony in the same line, extreme mental and or physical suffering, and again in the same line, pitiable. So the definition is quite literally deserving of pity, but in other words, it would be something that makes us sympathize or empathize with the event or the person or the group of people. It gets us to say, oh, shame, or I'm so sorry, phrases like that. Then we've got immobile, so unmoving, fairly straightforward, and ejaculate, which is to suddenly cry out. And then we have arouses, which is to awaken. So normally, sexuality, sensuality is associated with words like ejaculate and arouses. But in terms of this poem in particular and specifically, it's got to do with a birth. So you can imagine that a newborn, as they are delivered, will cry out. You have the cry of joy, obviously, of the parents and the family at the good news. They speak here about the rebirth. They speak here about the navel, like that of Europe, to whom she is connected through the navel. So this idea of the empire with the colony, mother and child. And so, yes, on the one hand, it does have this sensual sexual association, but it also does have the idea of birth, especially when we continue and go through the poem. You will see that things have to be done afresh, done anew. There is probably going to be replanting, rebuilding, all of those kinds of things. So, We have here the black mask, the red mask, the black and white masks, the rectangular masks. So those are representing different clans, tribes. If you are looking at a particular tribe, it could be the forefathers of the different families that are associated within that clan and tribe. They also speak about the lion-headed ancestor, which is a traditional African mask. And considering the poet, and also that this is from Senegal, it does have to do with the particular family. So the lion head is one of the very particular family masks of this poet, Leopold Sedar Senghor. So we do have that lion-headed ancestor. How they would ask this in an exam question is the connotations, what is suggested by being lion-headed. So don't include the family in the history and that it's got ties to the Senegalese flag and things like that. Just see it for what it is. If it's lion-headed, it's representing a lion. Lions are known for their bravery, their courage, their strength. Lions are also considered the king of the jungle, so it's got this idea of nobility, royalty. That's the path that you would take in answering that. Then they talk about this place. So that's speaking about the afterlife. So in many cultures and traditions, especially in Africa and the East, there were certain places where females couldn't go, where males couldn't go, where only an elder of a tribe was allowed to go. So this place is the afterlife, and the ancestors guard the entrance to any feminine laughter. So females were prohibited to be in this space, and specifically to any mortal smile. So there's no reason for a living human being to be in the afterlife unless they're dead. So then it speaks here about the air of eternity. So again, the afterlife, for eternity, and the air of my fathers. So again, mentioning the ancestors, he says specifically I and my. So he could be referring to his particular family and heritage and lineage. There is also the idea that they could be spirits of nature. So they've got the words, the diction, air, breath, wind. It can have something to do with direction and the cardinal points. People will often talk about the four corners of the earth. If you look at certain maps, especially old ones, it's got Zephyr and the other words from Greek and Roman mythology, the different winds of the earth. And then we have the maskless faces. So if you think of Egypt, the pharaohs often had masks. It was to give the idea of an ideal, something to do with perfection. And it does say free from dimples and wrinkles. So the mask is sort of an ideal representation of the person that they are covering. So you don't see dimples and wrinkles. There are no worries, no impurities, no troubles, no frown lines, no smile lines, no crow's feet, at the corner of the eyes. None of that would be on there. So it's very pristine, it's very idealized, but it might not show emotion. You wouldn't see anything in particular. If, for instance, you did, not this one, but we wear the mask in grade 11. Some of your teachers might have selected that from the CAPS curriculum, from the anthology that could be chosen from. So in that poem, the person is wearing a mask because they don't want the world to see what is going on the inside, to see the show of emotion. And that again was also to do with slaves and colonies and, being subject to an empire. And again, they didn't want people to see that, they were getting to them, that their cruelty was affecting them. There's a particular line where it says, we don't want them to be wise to it. Why should we give them the satisfaction of it? So again, there's this idea that you mask your emotions. Okay, so that was a bit of a tangent. You have composed this image. What is this image that they're referring to? My face, bending over the altar of white paper. Okay, so, I am one of your offspring. I have come from you. This is now my face, and I'm bending over an altar of white paper. So altar is usually part of the jargon that goes with worship. So an altar, an aisle, places of worship. It's got to do with reverence, honor, worshipping, etc. So we've got those points. So what is this altar? It's the white paper. So this can mean a couple of things. So it can mean the white paper for this poem. So the poet is looking at the paper on which he is composing this poem. And then it can also refer to laws and legislation. So, the government, printing out bills and dockets and policies and things like that. In the name of your image, listen to me. So listen to me, calling, invoking, okay, in the name of your image, on this thing I vow, in that person's name I swear an oath. So again, specifically, it's invoking, it's calling upon. And why does he want the ancestors to listen? Okay, he obviously he assumes that they have been watching what has been happening. You will see in a lot of protest poetry, and especially poetry that goes against a colonial power seeking independence, there is this image of not only the ancestors looking on, but also nature looking on. Specifically, the poem for the grade 12s, Poem of Return. Poem of Return, where it says, the tears of the dawn that have witnessed these dramas. So again, there's this idea that nature, the forefathers, the ancestors are looking down on what is going on. Just lost my place. Okay, so there is desperation. Okay, there is an exclamation mark. Listen to me now while the Africa of despotism is dying. So this is the particular thing that he wants them to pay attention to. Dying, death throes, the despotism, so this cruel, oppressive, absolute power is coming to an end, okay? It's dying. And he compares it to the agony of a pitiable princess, okay? It's sort of calling for sympathy and empathy. It's like shame, there it goes. It's pitiable, like poor thing, that kind of idea. So it's also got the idea, pitiable princess, of somebody who's been spoilt. It can also mean the decline of the nobility of traditional Africa. So specifically the word princess in the different tribes and clans and areas of Africa and their own kingdoms and empires, the royalty, and somebody who has been spoiled, and the decline. So as slaves and as workers and being shipped here, there and everywhere, this would have been lost, or it definitely wouldn't have as much impact, and definitely the colonial powers wouldn't have understood all the culture and the tradition that went along with it. So it's like a pitiable princess. Okay, there's no like or as. It is the agony of a pitiable princess, so we would call that a metaphor. It's a direct comparison. And then they use a simile to say, like that of Europe, to whom she is connected through the navel, so the umbilical cord. So it's very similar to a child being delivered and then also the umbilical cord being cut and the child being removed from the mother. So again, there is this idea that empire, colony, mother, child, and obviously considering the slavery and colonial powers, the care, the nurturing, the resources, the food, the sustenance that was supposed to be given wasn't there. Okay, it's like a neglected child. And now the poet says again, now fix. So we had now, while the Africa, we had the listen to me, and now again, now fix your immobile eyes. So there is this imperative, there is this command. Okay, so fix your immobile eyes upon your children who have been called and who sacrifice their lives like the poor man his last garment. So look at your children who have given up their lives, who have sacrificed like a poor man giving away the last bit of clothing that he has. Everything has been taken, everything has been given, and the lives are the only thing that they can actually take or give. So why? Why is there this sacrifice? Why does he want the ancestors to look? So that hereafter we may cry, here at the rebirth of the world, being the leaven that the white flower needs. So when this world is reborn, when this place is made anew, made afresh, rebuilt, all of that, it's so that they can say, here, it started here, it happened here. Okay, this is the leaven that the white flower needs. Okay, so leaven is obviously yeast. It's necessary for bread to rise when it's being baked. It's so that you can actually see, this is a bread and it's light and fluffy and warm and you can eat it, and now everybody's hungry. So symbolically, we need to be cut off. We need to be removed from the parent country, the mother empire. Okay, that umbilical cord needs to be cut so that the child can grow and develop and become an adult. So again, there is this personification and there is also a metaphor. So the leaven that the white flower needs is the metaphor, and personification is the rebirth of the world. Okay, the idea that the world can be born or reborn. Okay, then after here there are rhetorical questions. For who else? For who else? Say, who else? And these questions are not answered by the audience, by the reader. It's rhetorical. The poet is trying to get the reader and the audience to think, trying to get them to engage with what he's been written. So why does it matter that this is where it starts? Why does it matter that the world must be reborn here? Why must this country in particular be reborn and rebuilt and repopulated? Because who else, okay, is going to teach rhythm to the world that has died of machines and cannons? So despite the fact that they are also looking to themselves in order to rebuild and strengthen themselves and be a nation again, they're also looking at the rest of the world. They're also looking at this world that has been taken over by industry and warfare and, just the soot and the grime and the dirt and the messiness, because who else is there to teach them rhythm? Okay, who else is going to help the rest of the world? Who else is going to give a cry of joy that will awaken the dead and the wise in a new dawn? So not only are they kind of saving the world from, the war and the machines and the messiness that comes with it, but they're also waking people up. It says the dead and the wise. And there is this reference to a new dawn. A new dawn is not only a new day, quite literally, but it is a new era, a new time period, a new moment in history. So getting people to wake up and rise up and, actually think and do and be and, add to the places and the countries that they are in. And again, thirdly, who else can return the memory of life to men with a torn hope? So there's this idea that if we are able to break away, if we are able to be reborn as a country, there are many benefits to that, and it's going to reach the world. And one of them is to bring hope to men. So men who are hopeless, men who are dejected, people who have given up, we can then bring the memory of life to them. So remind them of what life is. And then the last couple of lines, I like to think that it's said a bit tongue-in-cheek. In other words, maybe the poet's saying it with a bit of a smile. So they call us cottonheads and coffee men and oil men and men of death, but we are the ones who gain power when we beat the hard soil. So when we dance and our feet beat the hard soil, this soil that has been overworked and overused and all resources being taken from and, overplanted, all of that, we are the men who can gain the power, who can bring it back again. So again, you can kind of think of rain dances, fertility dances. Many dances are done with people wearing masks for particular things that they are asking the ancestors for. And they say all these things about us, cottonheads, coffee men, oily men, men of death, but actually they're going to have to look to us. So that's one of the points that the poet is making here. And that's why I say it's said with a smile. It's almost like encouraging people that they can say this about us, but we're the ones who's going to make it work. The cottonheads, coffee men and oil men, that would be their trades where they labored. So the people in the cotton fields, people on the coffee plantations, the men working in mines, factories, all of that, the men of death. So the men of death, there's a note that says the Europeans view the black African as a fearful image of death. So there's this fear that people had. So a kind of curiosity, but then you could kind of call it a morbid curiosity. It's like they saw African people as, images of death. And I suppose it's their idea of, the Grim Reaper, black cloak, black hood. So maybe they put the two of them together. But the but is significant because, again, change of tone, change of direction. And he's saying that they've got the home advantage. They're on home turf. So, they've essentially got the high ground. They've got the advantage because they know where they are. They know what they're working with. And so, as a last little point, just some tone words: oppression, suffering, hope. The first part of the poem speaks about the oppression and the suffering, but there is also this idea of hope, where they talk about the rebirth, cry of joy, new dawn arouses, memory of life, gaining power. So there is that hope that comes through. And then lastly, there are some themes. Oppression and discrimination of Africans, again, a type of protest poem, looking at the colonial powers. This is what we're going through. This is why we don't want it. The role of the ancestors. So there is a thought that where it says, now fix your immobile eyes upon your children who have been called, there's this idea that there's two things. Are the ancestors actually really helpful? So do they have a different perspective on things, or is that perspective necessary? Do people need to look at that point of view, the idea of speaking with the elders, the wisdom of previous generations? Or does this mean, okay, look at us, you didn't do anything, you were immovable, so we're going to take over, we're going to pick up where you left off, so you're not doing it, so we'll do it. So this idea that the ancestors, there's no use for them in the future because it's going to take living, breathing people to bring about this change. So there is that question, there is that idea. So yeah, no particular structure. It's all just one whole body of text. I know that if you had to print it out or type it out or, put it on a Word document, some of the lines are going to carry on, to the underneath. But it is supposed to be just straightforward, single body of text. That's it. There's no particular rhyme scheme, there's no particular divisions. On the copy that I've got, some of the lines are indented, like mortal smile, princess, cannons, wise in a new dawn, beat the hard soil. But that's because the page wasn't wide enough, for it to be the whole line. And that's another thing. It is a prayer to mosques. It is urgent. There's no time to, put it in a nice structure and make it look all neat and pretty. Again, if you can think back to grade 10, for those of you who are part of the schooling system here in South Africa, there was Prayer for All My Countrymen by Guy Butler. And again, the point of that is that it's a prayer. Free verse, enjambment, very little punctuation, and that was to serve the purpose of just, here's my prayer, it's urgent, I'm just going to say what's on my heart, and, I hope the Lord hears. And in this case, I'm just telling the ancestors what's happening. So I'm calling for them, I'm invoking them, this is what's happening, this is where we're going. Very quick, urgent prayer. So that is the poem Prayer to Mosques by Leopold, Sedar, Senghor. And I will do a separate video answering the questions that you can see in the provided image. Thank you.